Perfect. All right, guys. Hello. Welcome back to another video. As you can see, the room is a bit different, and that is because I am done with my studies for now, and I've come back home. So yeah, another video, another day, and today we're going to be talking about why you really should be living a boring life or an alternative perspective to always chasing that next high, chasing that excitement in life, right? And not to say that one is better than the other. I think both are necessary depending on the goals that you want to achieve, depending on the things that you want to do. But I think for a vast majority of people, living a boring life is living a happy life. All right. So let's start with the myth of kind of living in, that extravagant, that, 24/7 awesome, great life, right? So I'm sure all of us have social media, have Instagram, so Snapchat, YouTube. Well, if you're watching this, you clearly have YouTube. But I think a lot of the highlights, especially on Instagram mainly, a lot of the highlights of the things that you see on people's reels or stories or posts are the highlights, right? The highlights of their lives, right? And if you don't kind of interpret it in context, right, you don't kind of look at it like, hey, this is just one very high point in somebody's life. You go through all of those posts, and it's just like highlight after highlight. Somebody's gone skydiving, somebody's going to another country, somebody just got married, somebody's doing this, that, all of that, right? And when you look at all of that, and you kind of like look at it and you say, you compare it to your life, because that's the first thing you're going to do, right? You're going to be like, why am I not doing it? It's going to be like, wow, I must be doing something wrong, because it looks like everyone's getting married, everyone's having a great time, no one's sad, everyone's making money, doing everything that they want to do, and I'm here sitting on my floor, I don't know, eating a bag of chips and hating life, right? And I don't think this is anything new. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to remind you guys. But the social media, the algorithm, it's made to kind of make you feel that way, right? In a sense, right? But what people neglect to post, and kind of what I'm trying to do in a way of kind of post more raw, more unedited, more authentic content, because a lot of people post the highlights with a lot of filters, a lot of edits, but they kind of neglect the parts that make them human, because you can't have a perfect person without a few imperfections, right? Obviously that's oxymorcal. Ooh, that's not a that's not a word. Paradoxical is what I mean. But to like make a person, to make somebody who's whole, to make somebody who is like a well-rounded person, you need those flaws. You need those, I don't want to say character developing moments, but those character developing moments where it's like those hardships, because that's what makes, I personally believe, somebody a lot more interesting. Not how many times they've gone to a new country, not how many, I don't know, like their relationships, or not like, oh, they make this much money. It's about, I think what makes a person more interesting and more of a person in general are the hardships that they struggle through. Like perhaps maybe they lost their parents at a young age, or perhaps they've started 5 businesses, but all 5 of them failed, right? That's more interesting to talk about, because yeah, sure, it's fun to talk about your successes, but behind every success is a failure, right? You need to have those failures, because if you think about it, most people in life have a similar goal, right? For example, most people want to be happy, most people want to make money, most people want to have a family or something like that, right? And a lot of people with those similar goals, the things that differentiate them between those goals isn't necessarily, well, yes, circumstance A, but it's their perseverance. It's like how long can they go before the amount of failures, or the amount of times that they haven't gotten to their goals, how far can they go before it kind of says, yep, I'm going to give up, right? I think that's what differentiates people between like winners and losers, right? And I think we only look at the winning part, and we don't look about all of the losses, and it kind of gives us a skewed perspective on the world, right? So again, I think we can go into depth about that topic, but the main thing is that a lot of people are consuming social media, consuming content without actually thinking about, hey, this is not necessarily how people necessarily live their life from the day to day. Now I have some notes again. I always want to make sure I'm not this rambling off, right? But yeah, so we know kind of now, or very briefly, that living a life that's only highs can lead to, making you feel, or not necessarily we know, but social media kind of looks at it in the sense that social media gives you the perspective that everyone's living such a great life when in reality they're not. But no one wants to look like the odd one out, right? But what does living a boring life really entail, right? What is a boring life? What is something that, oh, it's very mundane? Well, it's very simple, I think. It's not rocket science, right? It's simple things, right? You're waking up at the same time every day. You're going to bed at the same time every day. You have a consistent diet, perhaps you get some good exercise, you have small group of friends, you do a number of activities every day, right? And you kind of stick to that. You stick to a routine, and you do what you need to do to get to the places that you need to get to, right? And as much as that sounds boring, as much as that sounds like, oh wow, like you're gonna get bored of doing that, there's ways to inject life into your routines, right? There's ways of injecting, like, incitement into the things that you do, right? Sure, you could wake up every day at the same time and go to bed at the same time, but hey, when you wake up, maybe you read a different book, or maybe you do something else when you wake up at that same time. So you're still following those routines, but you're getting a little bit of a different perspective, right? And yeah, it sounds boring, it sounds lame, it sounds like, oh wow, like who would want to do that? But for me, and I think a lot of people, well, I hope people watching this are probably into fitness, but consistency is what builds your results, right? You go to the gym one day, you go hard, you go 100%, and this might be the best session you have had of the week, the month, of your life. If you go the next day and you're like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym, right? I'm not saying that all your work the day before is invalidated, but over a long enough period of time, it will, because your body doesn't remember the single times or the single instances. It remembers, or it responds much better to a more consistent, more patterned times of you going to the gym, right? So if you take that mentality of, consistency is going to beat hard work, or not necessarily hard work, but like one session all the time, and you apply that to your life, right? You then realize that, hey, it might be awesome to go skydiving, like, blah, 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 but you can't make that consistent. Some things in life are not meant to be something that you do every single day, and that's okay, right? I'm not saying anything's wrong with, having that extra boost from time to time, but what I am saying is that always trying to chase that and beating yourself up that, hey, I'm not necessarily doing so much fun things with my life. It's not a problem, right? Provided that you enjoy the life you're living, then it doesn't really matter what you're doing, right? It literally does not, because your friend isn't living your life for you. Your mom isn't living your life to you. Your coworkers, your boss, your, I don't know, son, they're not living your life for you. It's you, right? So if you're happy and you know what you need to do and you do what you need to do, it's like a lot of things, right? It's not necessarily difficult or not necessarily complicated to accomplish, right? Like, for example, right, you want to make $1 million, right? People say, oh, that's very difficult, that's very complicated. Well, it's a pretty simple process, right? Like, depending on the route that you want to do, right? Say, for example, you want to start a business. Well, you research how to start a business, you implement the research that you did, and then depending on your results, you adjust course, right? Now, it's simple, very simple. A lot of these things are simple. And with AI, with mentors, with people, like, if you don't know the answer, you just need to go out and find it, provided that you can communicate to other people in a high enough level. So that's probably maybe a grade 3 or grade 4 level. And you can take in information, remember it, recall it, and make decisions upon it. You can realistically accomplish a lot of different things, right? Now, simple and easy are not the same thing. Not at all, right? It is simple to follow somebody's plan for a business, right? It is simple because they've given you the instructions on what to do. It's not easy to follow, not necessarily easy to follow it, because that may mean that you may have to work 8 hours a day to finish one task, right? Simple, but not easy, right? And I think that therein lies the problem with living in a very exciting, a very, very, not exciting, that's wrong, because you can live an exciting but boring life, but a very like stimulation heavy life. It's because you don't necessarily have the ability to, wow, just completely lost my train of thought. We're gonna scrap that thought right there, and we'll move back on to just the reason why we need to live a boring life. And in essence, it's basically just because, being boring, being able to stick to those routines allows you to be more consistent, and being consistent over the long term is what separates people from just kind of doing it from time to time to the people who are going to truly succeed, right? Now, this is kind of all over the place, but I'd like to leave you guys with one more thing, and I think it's interesting to think about if you really want to be like the top 1%, right? Top 1%. Now, I read a book called Winning, and it's by the same person who coached Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, I think Dwayne Wade, and a lot of other famous athletes. I can't remember the name of the author, but the book's name was Winning. And it was a very interesting book, and it was generally accepted well, but a lot of criticisms for the book was that because it was kind of teaching you how to attain that level of winning, a level of success that those hyper athletic athletes were able to do, like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, right? And a lot of the criticisms that book had was that it was like inhumane. Like, it was talking about like you need to like harness your dark side, you need to like put everything to the side, like you've got to do what it takes, right? Typical self-improvement stuff, but it was like on another level. Like these are things like where it's like you're not going to see like the birth of your child, because like you got to be locked in, like you got to be like dialed in, like that's the type of shit, right? And he said it very unapologetically, right? And I think what this means in relationship to living a boring life is that living a boring life, I think, is more of like kind of like the standard, right? Which is how you kind of get to like 90% of your goals, 99% of your goals, 99.9% of your goals, right? But if perhaps what you want out there is you want to be the best, undisputable, like you want, like whatever your field is, whatever you want to be doing, you want to crush it. You want to be like, you don't want to be just okay. You don't want to be good. You don't even want to be great. You want to be the best, right? Then a lot of that advice I just gave you, you got to throw it out the window, right? Because if you do what everyone else does, you will get the same results as everyone else. Simple enough to understand. But if you do what no one else does, then you will get results that no one else has gotten. Simple enough to understand as well. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that for 99% of people, living a boring life is what's going to allow you to get most of your dreams, right? And it depends on how big of a dreamer you are, but you will be able to achieve most of your goals, right? Being wealthy, being happy, being financially stable, that's the same thing as wealthy. Being able to live a life that you're proud of, right? You will most likely be able to do that by living a boring life. Now, in a way, it's also kind of similar in the sense that not everyone wants to live a boring life. So that's why by doing that, you will get results that not many people get. But on the flip side, if you want to be like the top of your class, you want to be the top of like the best athlete, then you are going to have to do things that people don't necessarily want you to do. Not conventional, not healthy, and not necessarily what has been told for you to do. But that's okay in the sense of like, it's just a matter of your goals, right? So if your goals align with living a boring life, then sure, go ahead. And that's kind of what I said at the start of the video. But if they don't, and you really want to be kind of the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the Michael Jordan of whatever you're doing, or in my personal opinion, LeBron James, but then you just gotta go out and do it, right? Yeah. I don't know, I felt like this video was a bit all over the place, more so than usual. Maybe it's because I'm in a new environment, but, well, that's how it is going to be for a little bit. All right, that's it. I'll see you guys later.